الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I begin by praising Allah for His bounties and His untold blessings that He has showered us with, and seeking His forgiveness on my own behalf, on behalf of all of us present and all mu'mineen and mu'minat, for our sins and our shortcomings. May He forgive and guide and protect us and keep us on the right path. As you know, we are now in the closing days of the month of al-Qa'dah, and we are just a few days from the beginning of the 12th and final month of the Islamic calendar, which is Dhul Hijjah. And both of these are important months. They are among the 4 months in which warfare is prohibited in Islam. Dhul Hijjah is a month of pilgrimage and worship, and it is a month in which, even before Islam, those Arabs who had preserved a memory of the teachings of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi wa ala nabiyyina wa alihi salatu wassalam, they used to avoid any kind of aggression or any kind of warfare, and that would give security to people so they would be able to perform their worship. They would be able to travel to Mecca for pilgrimage, and as part of that journey, it would also give them an opportunity to visit one another and conduct trade, and so it had worldly benefit and spiritual benefit for society. In Islam, the month of Dhul Hijjah also has a very high importance. One of the things that is recommended is for a person to fast on the first 9 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. Now, many of us, we have a faint memory of the month of Ramadan, and this year it was at a time when the days were not quite so long and not quite so hot. But some of you probably remember, if you are old enough, when the month of Ramadan was in the summer. And it is a little bit more challenging, but it is also in some ways more rewarding to fast in that difficult circumstance. Rewarding in the sense that the more you sacrifice and the more effort you put, the more reward and barakah and blessing there is. It also is a discipline and a training. So it is the grace of Allah that He allowed the occasions of the Islamic calendar to circulate through the solar year. So, alaykum salam. So fasting is not always at a time of heat, nor is it always in the winter. That obligation is complete. But there is a recommendation to fast outside of when it is required. Many of us are familiar with the recommendation to fast in the month of Rajab and the month of Sha'ban, particularly in the month of Sha'ban. It was the practice of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa and it was the practice of many of our ulama to fast the entire month of Sha'ban, but even to fast a single day in the month of Rajab or a single day in the month of Sha'ban, that also has a great deal of reward. Doesn't require a person to fast the entire month. But fewer people are familiar with the other recommendations outside of Rajab and Sha'ban. One of those periods when it is very highly recommended to fast is the first 9 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. So if you are able to, if you are off from school, if you are able in your health and in your circumstances, then make that plan and fast all 9 days or some of those days, and you will, inshallah, get the reward and the benefit. This is something that requires a little bit of a plan. So we have a few days, and sometimes it helps to change our diet before we want to fast so that our stomach doesn't remind us that we are skipping lunch. It's used to having a lighter lunch, an earlier breakfast, a later dinner, if it helps us prepare. So in the summer months, you have to take care of your health and your hydration, and that preparation can begin now. If you have missed any days of fasting in the month of Ramadan because of travel, because of health reasons, then you can do the intention of Qa'dah, meaning make up that missed day, and you cannot fast a recommended fast until you have made up that obligation. So you will get the reward of fasting in the first 9 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah, and you will also make up that obligation. So that is one thing to remember. Then there is a hadith from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa that ما من أيام العمل الصالح أحب فيها إلى الله من عشر ذي الحجة. There are no days in which any good deed or any amal salih is more beloved to Allah than these first 10 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. This is that period when whatever good deed you want to do, it has the greatest reward and the greatest blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the time to make your intention to do good deeds. If there is something that you know is pleasing to Allah and you wanted to do it, but you didn't get around to it. So these first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, give that donation to a worthy cause, give that assistance to a needy relative, reconnect with maybe a relative that you have lost touch with, rekindle your relationships, perform that recommended act of worship, dedicate a good deed to your parents or your grandparents or your teachers, whatever good deeds you want to do. There is no limit in Islam on what that amal salih is. It can be an act of ritual worship, like a recommended prayer. It can be recitation of Quran. It can be recitation of dua. It can be connecting with somebody that is a relative or is an acquaintance or somebody who showed you kindness in your life and you have lost touch. It can be a financial contribution or assistance to a needy person or to a worthy cause. Or it can be any other good deed. And the best thing is to do as many of these as we can, because all of them are amal salih, and this is the time when that amal salih is very highly rewarded. So one thing is, make a plan if you are able to fast some or all of those days. And number two, make a plan to do amal salih, in particular in that first 10 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah, from the beginning of the month until the day of Eid al-Adha. With regard to fasting, just one note is that specifically on the day of Arafah, it is recommended to fast. But whether a person is in Hajj or a person is at home, sometimes when you fast, especially if you're not used to fasting, or if maybe your health does not make it easy for you, when you fast, you have less energy and ability to be active. So on the day of Arafah, it is recommended to fast. But if fasting on the day of Arafah is going to weaken you, and for example, you don't have the energy and you need to take a nap, and therefore you will not be able to do ibadah, then although fasting is recommended, it is better not to fast in order to be able to do ibadah. And so that tells us the importance, of course, of fasting, but of that day of Arafah. It is not just for those who are in Hajj, but for everyone. If it is possible, and most likely the day of Arafah we will see the moon sighting, but most likely it will be, I believe it is a Wednesday, it is the 28th of June. So if you can make arrangements to be available during that day and to engage in ibadah, and particularly at the time of Asr, so the afternoon, that last 4 or 5 hours of the day until sunset, even if you have other things to do in the morning, or if you go to work, or if you go to school, if you have classes or other commitments, if you can leave a little bit early, get some rest, and then spend the Asr of Yawm Arafah in ibadah, then that has a great deal of reward. And if you can spend more than that, the entire day, then that is also very highly recommended. Many of you are familiar with the famous dua of our third Imam, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, alayhi salam. he has a very famous and a very detailed dua known as Dua Arafah, and that is one of the du'as which is recited. It is one of the few du'as that we have narrated from our third Imam. We associate Imam Hussein with sacrifice and with courage and with patience and forbearance, but he was also known in his time for his ibadah and his sincerity and devotion to Allah, and that is reflected in Dua Arafah. The day of Arafah is the best time, but not the only time to recite that dua. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So I hope this helps us prepare a little bit for the month of Dhul Hijjah, so we will know what is the recommendation during this month. It is a time of worship and devotion. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Remember Allah in specified days. According to narrations from Ahlul Bayt, these specified days are in the month of Dhul Hijjah, the 3 days after Eid al-Adha, which are known as Ayyamut Tashriq. And according to a hadith of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, the Quran, when it mentions Ayyam Ma'dudat or Ayyam Ma'lumat in Surah Al-Baqarah and in Surah Al-Hajj, I believe verse 28 of Surah Al-Hajj, they are referring to the same thing, those 3 days of Ayyamut Tashriq. And then in Surah Al-Fajr, we have a mention of 10 nights. Wal-Fajr wa-layalin ashr. Those 10 nights, according to many narrations, are the first 10 nights of the month of Dhul Hijjah. So there are 2 mentions in the Quran of specified days or specified nights in this month. And let me just go through that list a little bit so we are familiar. These are in particular associated with Hajj. And Hajj is something that we should all value and pray for Allah to give us the tawfiq. Even if you've been for Hajj, then pray to Allah to give you the tawfiq to perform Hajj again. And if you have certainty that your health or your circumstances will not facilitate it, then pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the health and the financial ability and the circumstances so that you will be able to pray for and to perform Hajj. Pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to restore that proper leadership of the Muslim world. So the Hajj is not just a series of acts of worship and ritual that Muslims perform, but it fulfills its intended purpose, which was to unite the Muslims so they can then go to the Imam of their time and offer their obedience and receive their instructions for the fulfillment of their religious obligations. Hajj was, yes, a pilgrimage for Allah, but it was also for us to come and to unify our attention and to get guidance and instructions for our life from our Imam. So that is one of the prayers of Dhul Hijjah, that may this be the year in which our Imam reappears and in which that purpose of Hajj is not just prayed for and aspired to, but it is fulfilled. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And finally, if you have fulfilled your obligation, then there are several other ways that you can value Hajj even if you are not performing Hajj. One is if you know somebody who is going for Hajj, then go and tell them that they are very blessed and you want them to pray for you. And if there is anything that they need in their absence, that you are there to look after their house or their other affairs or their family so that they can be at peace during that journey. This is one of the ways that we create a culture in our society of valuing Hajj. When everybody who goes says that people that I might not have met for a long time, they are coming and they are offering their assistance if I need something. And they are praying for me. And they are asking me for my du'as. And that increases the attention to Hajj and to the worship of Allah in our families and in our communities. We can assist other people in our family, maybe who will have difficulty, who have that dream. I cannot go, but I can maybe assist somebody else in order to perform their Hajj or their Umrah. So Hajj should be central in our practice and in our prayers, even if we are not physically going to Hajj. And then, of course, during this month of Dhul Hijjah, when Hujjaj return, then make a point of going, visiting, welcoming, and seeking their prayers and their blessings, because they bring barakah back with them from that journey. So these days that we have in the month of Dhul Hijjah, many of them, they are associated with Hajj, but the barakah is not limited to those people who are in Hajj. The 8th of Dhul Hijjah, the day before Arafah, is known as Yawm Tarwiyah. And that was the day before modern plumbing and infrastructure. People would go and bring water to the plain of Arafah, which was at a distance from Mecca, so that those who were in Hajj, they had sufficient water for them to drink and for their needs. So that was kind of the day of irrigation. The 9th of Dhul Hijjah is Yawm Arafah. And that is when those who are in Hajj, they go to Arafat. Arafat is the place, and Arafah is the day. Sometimes people make a mistake. Arafat is a place, and Arafah is the name of that day, when the people in Hajj go to Arafat. That is a time of ibadah and worship, whether for the Hujjaj or for those who are in their own homes. The day after Yawm Arafah is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and that is Eid al-Adha, the Eid of the sacrifice. For those in pilgrimage, it is a requirement, and for those who are not in Hajj, it is very highly recommended to sacrifice an animal and to then distribute that meat to one's relatives and to those who are needy. That is known as udhiyya, the sacrifice. The 3 days after Eid al-Adha, they are known as Ayyam al-Tashriq. The 11th, 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Ayyam al-Tashriq. And according to the narrations of Ahlul Bayt, this is what Ayyam Ma'dudat and Ayyam Ma'lumat in Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Hajj are referring to. According to a hadith from our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, when the pilgrims used to gather in Ayyam al-Jahiliyyah before Islam, they would go for pilgrimage, and then on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, they would go to Arafat. On the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, they would make their way through Muzdalifah to Mina. They would perform their rituals in their own way, not entirely the same as we perform them as Muslims, but not entirely different, because the original teaching had come from Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they would go to Mina, they would perform their ritual, and then they would sit around and they would just shoot the wind. They would talk and they would brag and they would try to compete with one another, for worldly honor and showing off. And so that ibadah, which was meant to be an act of worship, it became very cheapened and it became just a social event. And according to the hadith of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, that is why Allah reminds us that وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهِ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. When you go and you are in a time of worship, you are at a place of great blessings, then you get together with your community, you get together with so many people. These days, many of us, if we have friends and family that live in different parts of the country or even different parts of the world, then it is Hajj or Umrah or Ziyarah when we are able to meet not only people from our own social circle, but even maybe people that we haven't met for years or for decades. So you want to socialize and you want to catch up. But remember, that is a time of worship. And when we have gatherings of worship, then remember the sanctity of that place or that time. And don't just convert it to a social event. The socialization will take place. But don't limit your religious worship to socialization. Now, this teaching was specifically for Hajj. But that lesson and that reminder applies to all of our religious gatherings and to all of our observances. When you come to a program at the Masjid, then don't come as a consumer. Meaning you come to listen or to learn or to benefit or to eat, and then you leave. Don't come just for the socialization. Sometimes there are people, they time their entrance so they can be as efficient, and rather than act according to what is recommended, come first and leave last, they come last and leave first. So they can check off that I went, I participated, maybe I socialized, but they are not there for that event. Come not as a consumer, but come as a server. Come as a servant. Server with respect to your community, servant with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a devotee. And that is because when we are gathered at a place of worship or at a time of worship, وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهِ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the purpose why we gather together for iftar in the month of Ramadan. That is the reason why we get together for salat, whether it be Salatul Maghrib or Salatul Jumu'ah or any other occasion. The side benefit is that we see one another. And after Jumu'ah, sometimes people say, let's go together to lunch. But don't convert that worship into just socialization. That is the benefit you get. The focus should be on worship. Many times our majalis as well. The focus needs to be restored to remembering Allah, serving Allah, worshiping Allah, reminding ourselves of our duties, and then we may talk, we may share a meal, and we may derive many other benefits as well. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So once again, the month of Dhul Hijjah is one of the sacred months. It is a very important time. Let us prepare for it. And let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the opportunity of Hajj, inshaAllah. And if we are not going this year, to bless all of those who are performing Hajj in this year and protect them and keep them in His safety. Many of them have already begun the journey or they are going to be leaving very soon. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from the blessings and the rewards available in this month for those who do good. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد صلى على محمد وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين صلوات. In the second khutbah, I will limit myself to reminding myself and all of us of how many ways Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us, in ways that we are aware of and in ways that we are not aware of. Sometimes we feel like we are missing out on many of the finer things in life. Our society, our culture, our media, it puts very much in front of us all of those unique new inventions, experiences, those things that we want to do or we might want to do. And so many people, we have a bucket list. And when you have a bucket list, sometimes if you're not able to do those things that you want to do or experience those things that you want to experience, you can feel dissatisfied with what you have in your life. And that is why it is important not for us to cross out things and eliminate them from our bucket list, but expand your bucket list to include things that are not material, that are not just an experience or a physical place to go or food to eat or thing to do, but rather that are spiritual. And when you include your list to include things that are religious and spiritual, you will become more humble and you will become more appreciative of the blessings that Allah has given you. So if I say that, oh Allah, I want to be able to do dua. Maybe, for example, on the day of Arafah, I've never been able to spend the entire day in ibadah. So my bucket list is that, oh Allah, give me the opportunity to not have work, not have other commitments, so I can recite those du'as of the day of Arafah properly. Oh Allah, maybe I've never been able to fast all 9 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. I didn't know about it, or I was not able to do it. Oh Allah, my bucket list is that I want to fast on those 9 days. So increase. And when you increase it, then you will be able to, inshaAllah, also have a greater appreciation for the bounties of Allah. May Allah make us grateful and appreciative and cognizant of His bounties, and may He motivate us to do more to earn His pleasure and His reward. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna Allaha ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salatul Jumu'ah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah, wa anna Aliyan hujjatullah.